You found your way to Blood Moon Radio. I'm Coraley, and this is where we follow the threads the world wants us to drop. When I started the journey of creating the Blood Moon Radio universe, I was really in a dark place. You've heard me say that, and I've talked about it a bit on the podcast, but I don't know whether I've fully described it. I was very downtrodden and didn't have a lot of energy. And this project is the thing that brought me back. I wouldn't say that I'm feeling fully like myself yet, but what I am is a work in progress, and this has been such a very, very big piece of that. And the listeners, you, are also a piece of that. So before we get into the last episode of the very first season of what will be many to come, I want to express my gratitude to you for being here with me on this journey, sharing in these wonderful conversations that I get to have with amazing guests, and delving into interesting topics, relevant topics, history, a little bit of magic, because that's fun and we all need more fun. This has just been amazing for me, and I just sincerely hope that you can feel and hear in my voice my gratitude for coming along. So this is the final episode of Season 1, the Empress Rising, Blood Moon Radio, and I'm calling it The Last Spell. Welcome to another episode of Blood Moon Radio. If you've been here since episode 1, thank you for joining me on this journey. And if you found this episode somewhere in the middle of your own journey, then perhaps you're arriving exactly when you're meant to. This is the final episode of Season 1, and I've been thinking a lot about endings. Endings are strange things. We're taught to celebrate beginnings, new jobs, new relationships, new businesses, new babies, new ideas. But endings, they're quieter. They're where we find out what actually changed. When I first imagined Blood Moon Radio, I thought I was creating a podcast. Midway through, I thought I was creating conversations. But now I think I was creating a permission slip. Not just for myself, but for anyone who's ever been told they're too much, too emotional, too ambitious, too loud, too mystical, too intellectual, too sensitive, too opinionated, just too much, especially women, because history has a habit of punishing women who refuse to stay within the lines. One of the themes that has appeared again and again in this season is voice. Not simply speaking. Those aren't the same thing. Many of us have spent years talking while saying almost nothing. Smiling when we wanted to disagree. Apologizing before we shared an idea. Editing ourselves so that everyone else could stay comfortable. Voice isn't volume. It's truth. Sometimes the truth whispers. Sometimes the truth arrives shaking. Sometimes the truth says, I don't actually know. Sometimes it says, I've changed my mind. And sometimes it says, no. For many women, that single word has been one of the hardest spells to learn. We've also talked about reclaiming stories. History has always been written by someone. Every woman who challenged power was given a label. Difficult, hysterical, unstable, dangerous, witch. And isn't it fascinating how often those labels really meant she wouldn't comply? I've become increasingly interested in the women who made people uncomfortable. The ones who asked inconvenient questions. The ones who insisted on creating anyway. The ones who built businesses, made art, left marriages, refused traditions, learned herbal medicine, lived alone, loved differently, or simply existed without asking permission. History often punishes them first, then studies them later. I think that's why the witch archetype still matters. Whether you identify as a witch or not is beside the point. The witch represents a woman who cannot be controlled. She possesses knowledge that isn't granted by institutions. She trusts her instincts. She belongs to herself. That has always frightened systems that are built on obedience. And perhaps that's why she continues to fascinate us. When I chose the theme, the Empress Rising, it wasn't because the Empress is soft and beautiful, although she is. It was because she's abundant, creative, grounded, generative. She doesn't create because someone handed her permission. She creates because creation is her nature. The Empress grows forests, businesses, families, community, art, ideas, healing. She knows there is enough, not just for herself, but for others too. Enough creativity, enough opportunity, enough success, enough love. Scarcity says, if she succeeds, I lose. The Empress says, the garden is bigger than that. This season has also reminded me that healing isn't linear. It would be lovely if growth looked like climbing a staircase. Instead, it often looks like wandering through a forest. You revisit places you thought you'd already left. You learn the same lesson again. You discover that grief, confidence, and creativity all have seasons. I know there are listeners who are building businesses. Some are writing books. Some are leaving careers. Some are quietly surviving difficult relationships. Some are raising children while trying not to lose themselves. Some are rediscovering themselves after years of caring for everyone else. And some of you are simply trying to remember who you were before the world told you who you should become. I hope this season has reminded you that those journeys all deserve respect. Not because they look impressive to the outside world or online, but because they're real. I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of being too much. I've spent a lot of time thinking about those words. What an extraordinary phase. Because it assumes there's a correct amount of humanity we're allowed to occupy. Who decided that? Who benefits when we become smaller? Who profits from our self-doubt? Imagine if every hour spent apologizing for ourselves had instead been spent creating, writing, starting businesses, painting, running for office, teaching, resting, loving, living. How much brilliance have we lost because someone convinced us that we should take up less space? The Empress has always been my favorite tarot card. It's the card I've related to the most. Not because she's perfect. She isn't. But what she is fertile with possibility. That fertility isn't limited to the idea of creating children, creating life. It's ideas, it's courage, It's reinvention. It's the ability to imagine something that doesn't exist yet and then patiently bring it into the world. Every meaningful thing begins as something invisible, a thought, a feeling. When it comes to fruition, the world sees the finished product. Very few people witness the months or years of uncertainty that came before. Blood Moon Radio itself is proof of that. Like anything worth creating, it has required faith before evidence. There were moments where I questioned everything. Moments where the numbers mattered too much, where comparison threatened joy, where the work felt endless or overwhelming. But every meaningful project asks the same question. Do you believe in it before the applause arrives? If you don't, if your validation depends on outside approval, then the audience matters more than the work. And that's something I think in our modern age, we all have to grapple with, sit with, and unpack for ourselves. What is your motivation for doing what you do? Truth-telling is risky. It always has been. But silence has costs too. Every generation inherits stories that were never told. The women who came before us often survived by remaining quiet. Many didn't have choices that we have now. One way we can honor them is by using our voices in ways they weren't allowed to. I don't think empowerment looks like certainty. I think it looks like curiosity. It looks like saying, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm willing to grow. Strength without humility becomes ego. Humility without strength becomes disappearance. The balance is where wisdom lives. So where do we go from here? Season 1 ends. But the conversations don't. This has only been the beginning. There are more stories to tell, more history to reclaim, more difficult questions to ask, more voices that deserve microphones instead of margins. And I hope you'll continue walking this path with me. Before I leave you, I want to offer one thought. If you've ever been called too much, consider the source. Were you too much? Or were you simply more than someone else had the capacity to accommodate? The moon has never apologized for pulling the tides. The forest never apologizes for growing wild. And the raven doesn't apologize for its voice. Maybe our work isn't to become less. Maybe our work is to become entirely ourselves. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your messages, your encouragement, your trust, and your willingness to explore these conversations with curiosity and courage. Whether you came here for the tarot, the history, the business, spirituality, storytelling, or simply because something about this space felt familiar, I'm grateful you found your way here. Until next season, keep asking questions, keep creating, keep telling the truth. And when the world tells you you're too much, remember that every woman they feared enough to call a witch was already changing it. This has been Blood Moon Radio, and this season is the Empress Rising. I will see you under the next moon. It is my sincere hope that this season has brought you conversations that made you think, question, seek, and connect. Even though season 1 is at an end, we have prepared some amazing bonus content that I'll be uploading over the seasonal break. And if you'd like to find even more of us, you can do that at our website, www.bloodmoonradio.com. There are all sorts of ways to support the show and to interact on there, and one of the best ones is to purchase a membership. The membership areas are packed with bonuses, extra interactions with me, interactions with other listeners, and just some really cool stuff, including my favorite part of the website, the secret rooms. If, like me, you love a good mystery, they may turn out to be your favorite part of the website too. And until next time, remember, the truth echoes louder after dark. Whispered, unfiltered, waiting to be touched. See you soon.